second stripe, 6 years as a black belt. Guys, welcome to the Sambo versus BJJ edition. No, what we're going to talk about is gi versus no gi. So I'm going to kind of go over what my game kind of looks like, where Enrique's obviously wearing gi top. I'm not. So let's look at what it'll look like gi versus no gi. So let's go. Keep going. All right, can you take the gi top off? Yes. You should have stretched. Go ahead. Oh, I have an Esteban. Oh. One more time from the guard. Standing guard. Come on. Don't just fall. Let's see who prevails. No, you can't.
Oh, so close.
All right, guys. So I know it's just maybe a minute of, maybe two of just going. So what did you see? I know it's just sort of, it might have been a bit of a mess. I'll tell you what I saw. So this is maybe last 5 years, gi versus no gi. And what the debate is, some people saying gi is dead. It's not dead, guys. People tend to hyper focus on one or the other without actually doing the other one. I personally prefer no gi because it's faster, more fluid game. That said, every time I train with people, with my guys or anybody, I generally do half gi, half no gi. Why? If you go back, if you watch this again and you go back, the difference is, so if you look at my placement of my hands, it's almost the same. It's the grip's slightly different. So I don't really pay too much attention. So if it's no gi, I will grip the head and tricep. With the gi, I will switch to the sleeve. So, and my attacks are not that much different. What is very different, and this is one of the major benefits of training both, is the rhythm. When I get a gi grip and the sleeve, those grips are so strong that I have more time to be more deliberate. With no gi, if you notice, this is the big difference, guys. If you watch it, you'll see it. With no gi, once I don't have the grips, I need to, once I get my grips there, so it's this versus this, the placement is almost the same. The grip is different, but the rhythm is where the value comes in from cross-training between gi and no gi. Because, like I said, the strong grips of the gi allow you to sort of a little bit more time to pick a more appropriate or a better attack or better technique, or kind of you have more time to think. With no gi, Once you get those grips, you better use them because the nogi, obviously, the grips are not as strong, and therefore he can change them quickly. So you need to get in a position of controlling his limbs quickly and then using them more quickly. That changes the rhythm. So if you primarily a gi player, they may become a guy that's super fast, and then you really need to make sure that you make that rhythm quick, even though it's a gi game. So he doesn't allow you to get your grips to the point where you could slow him down and now play that more deliberate game. Now, conversely, if you're primarily a no-gi player, there may be a guy that you want to or a big guy that you may need to move very quickly. If you're primarily a gi player, if you go with the gi with a bigger guy, the balance of sort of power, assuming same sort of skill level, shifts to the bigger guy because those grips are now stronger. So if you train between one and the other, I believe that it enhances the other one. Yes, there are guys that are like, in my mind, Gordon is super special. He's just super technical. His technique's better than the guys at that level, and he's hyper focused on nogi. Some of the other guys, and the fact that nogi is faster, it makes it a little bit more interesting from a spectator because things are happening quickly. The reason is because those grips, by their nature, are not as strong as with the gi, and they have to move. But I believe it also is a mental a mindset that people tend to with the gi tend to play more IBJJF rules, which tend to be a little bit more boring. My biggest peeve with IBJJF rules is if I'm in quarter guard, like, this side, quarter guard. So if I'm here, I'm super dominant. This is not quarter guard, guys. This is nothing. If I decide to take the risk on attacking and this, Enrique just swept me. So my motivation is to sit there until I can get my foot safely rather than attack. That to me is probably the single most bad thing about IBJJF rules is it encourages the guys to be very conservative when they have a dominant position, not as far as scoring goes, but as far as positionally or control goes. Now, so basically, if you look at sort of the winners of major no-gi tournaments across divisions, most of the guys train gi and no-gi. Yeah, if you do the stats, most of them train gi as well as no-gi. Now you have that sort of division where now people are hyper-focusing on one or the other. I don't believe that is necessarily the best for majority of the practitioners. I believe for majority of the practitioners, it's best to do. I recommend a guy that's a no-gi competitor to train gi once a week, and somebody that's primarily a gi competitor to do no-gi once a week, because I think that's enough for you to kind of get the taste of the faster or slower rhythm. And you may need to at the highest level, a lot of times the guy that wins is the one that imposes their rhythm. So you need to know how to turn it on, turn it off, and apply when you need to. All right, now we open it up to questions.
Awesome. Good morning, Elad. Rigid.
What's up, Elad?
RIJT. He says, first time in a long time. Good morning, guys. Guess he's back. I mispronounced that. I apologize. Sasha, good morning.
Richardas?
RIJT.
Oh.
Rich? I apologize.
That's the problem with YouTube. Everybody has usernames as opposed to real names.
Right. Good morning, John Anderson. Antoine from France.
What's up, Antoine? I hope that stuff worked for you, the one we covered last week.
Awesome. And Elad, based on your first question, asking what you noticed from the gi and no-gi, Elad said you always initiate the first move, you never react.
Yeah, that's another good point. This was one of the most frustrating periods in my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sort of career, life, whatever you want to call it, is I go with somebody that's, Enrique, pretend you're 230 goon. And I'd be like playing around, let him pass guard, and like my technique is superior, I will get out. Oh shit, why can't I get out? Now I spend 2 minutes trying to get out. By the time I finally get out, I'm like exhausted, And I'm like, man, what happened to the superiority of technique? This is a trap that many, many practitioners fall into. Mental trap. And what happens is they believe that their technique is superior, which it might be. But depending on the skill gap, you let that guy get far enough in front of you, you're going to have an awfully hard time catching them. It's sort of like, think about Ferrari versus 4T, quarter of a mile. You know, if the Ferrari sits at the start line and Model T lets the Model T get, 5 yards, 5 meters in front of the finish line, and then he goes, Model T is going to win. Does that mean it's a better car? No, it just means that you let that guy get too far ahead of you. So the point that I'm trying to make, guys, don't feel bad about it. Yes, technique conquers all. However, you need to start applying that technique. You know, if you get grips from the guard, use them immediately, especially in NoGi. If you kind of have grips from the guard and you don't use them, they're worthless. Let that sink in. Right? We talked about this, right? One of the good ways I like to attack, stand up for me, is this. So either 2-on-1 or this. Right? So I have 4 grips right now. If I let Enrique shove it, now my grips are worthless. Okay? So when you get your grips, use them. With the gi, it gives you a little bit more time to sleep. Let's call it that. So again, one of the things that I advocate, especially if you're going against a guy that's close level to you, or is not as there's a skill gap, but it's, the guy may be 50, 80 pounds heavier, move, attack. Because the minute, especially with big guys, so I train with some guys that are 250. We got the Czech crew here. So some of these guys, they chop wood as a hobby. Yesterday he did the warm up. I thought I was worried about some of my students. Well, all of them actually. If I wait, it's gonna get ugly for me very fast. So hopefully that answers your question.
Awesome. Good morning, baseball. Good morning to all of us. John Anderson, good morning. He has a quick question on your thoughts on JJJ, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and our location. We're currently at the Butler location. There's other locations in East Hanover and Southbrook, the main location.
Yes, where are you at? But my thought is, listen, martial arts are all good. If you train Tai Chi, you're going to be better off than a guy that doesn't train. Me, in my mind, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the most effective martial art, and that's why I'm doing it. That's kind of my thought. But all martial arts are good, and at the end of the day, whatever you pick, make sure you practice and dedicate yourself to it. There's sort of, it's kind of interesting. I had a discussion with a martial artist who I respect deeply. So he's really good at a lot of different styles, including black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, he kind of has all these aspects. I started my martial arts sort of career striking, more than 30 years ago. By the way, this is my 30th year in Jiu-Jitsu.
You're older than me.
Slightly. you were not even born. I lost my train of thought.
Good at a lot of different.
But so martial arts are all good, but I personally chose the tack of going deep. So I started striking. I went deep there. Once I started to get exposed to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the first 5-7 years I was training a couple times a week and still doing striking. The last 15 years I primarily do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I just want to be the best in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner and teacher I can be. That's it.
Awesome. Hello, Joel Gilbert from Vermont. John Grappler, good morning. He says the gi is slow and most people stall there like crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. I think it's a function of two things. It's the grips give you luxury of waiting a little bit longer as opposed to NoGi. Once you get decent grips on NoGi, you better use them fairly quickly until you get to a position of complete control, top side control, where you have really strong, good pressure on the guy's neck, and then you can kind of pause. But generally speaking, with nogi, you got to move. You got to move, and you will need that mental mindset even when you train gi. There is something like sometimes in the gi there's things that suddenly start to move. You better know how to react quickly. You know, the second one is, like I said, IBJJF rule set. I generally speaking do not have an issue with it. My biggest peeve is that sort of when you're on top and you're in the guy's guard, like I said, if he holds on to your foot, generally speaking, the guy on top is penalized. So if I'm in a gi or no gi tournament, and Enrique just like literally, we're here. If I just stall here, if I just stop doing anything, the referee is gonna touch me on the back because I'm supposed to improve my position. So he's gonna touch me on the back for me to go, not for Enrique to go. But you know, the rules are supposed to mimic sort of the self-defense aspect of this martial art. You know, if I'm here, I'm gonna light him up. Let's see how long he's gonna be able to hold on to my leg. So the point I believe is if I take the risk, oh, I got this. But if I take the risk on moving and attacking from there and wind up on the bottom, I believe anything other than full guard or half guard should be eliminated. You know, same thing. The problem becomes a judgment call. This is so, and I do this. Enrique just swept me. Did he really sweep me?
Yes.
Now it's even. So the point is, again, this is my biggest issue with the IBJJF rules is the fact that they do not reflect almost like intent. So if I go for submission from the top and he squashes it and winds up on top, there should be no score. Instead, there is basically, but it needs to be a legitimate. This is where the judgment call comes in. I think IBJJF tried to eliminate the judgment call out of the equation. And I think in the current environment, it becomes counterproductive, maybe is the best word, but what do I know?
ADCC is doing it right.
Yeah, I like ADCC rules. I like Eddie Bravo rules, but you know, if you look at some of the EBI tournaments, it's guys that know they have no chance of finishing the other guy in a regulation. They'll basically stall long enough, somehow survive the regulation round, because they believe they'll have faster escape time. So there's literally, you can look it up. There's winners of EBI that have $0 by the time they win. They win the belt, but $0 because they never submitted anybody in regulation. So again, people will learn to game any set of rules. But okay, again, what else do we got?
Antoine said absolutely helped last week. Thanks, Fox. Game changer.
Nice. I'm always happy to hear that. Guys, I'm happier to hear it when you say it in public forum than send me private messages, because sometimes I get so many private messages. And listen, if it's something you got, you've said because, something in your life, contact me privately. I will always make time. But if it's something that, should be discussed in the public forum where others could benefit from the same things, I prefer it to be in public forum.
Guys,
unless it's a private matter.
You can call him 24/7 on Facebook.
We're getting a lot of questions. I'm going to keep them in order. Daddy Unbox, how to escape tight side control. Any tricks?
I'm sorry, I'm still on the name. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Any tricks you have for a tight side control? How to escape? If you just got someone that's
escape?
Tight. Yeah.
Oh, okay. There is no tricks. It's all technique. So don't think about jiu-jitsu as tricks. We're not magicians. So again, it's okay. So guys, anytime somebody is in my control, I try to either have them on my shoulders or my hips. So if they're sort of in between, I usually slide to get them on my hips or to get them on my shoulders. So it's a small adjustment, but that's the first adjustment I'm making. understand that if I'm in this position, my arm is vulnerable. So I always also know that. So I'm making sure I don't control him like this. I tend to control him with almost my elbow inverted. Okay? So basically, if I bring him on my hips, my legs can pop him up, all right? So even if it's a big guy, you know, your legs are stronger, you could always pop him up to create space. If he's on my shoulders, my hips can move from side to side, up and down. They can create space. So when he's on my shoulders, I'm gonna try to move side to side. As he's making adjustments, I'm making my own adjustments. So from here, guys, I taught this. I've been using this grip for 15 years, maybe more, maybe 20. It's almost impossible to break. He has to move. Now I regain, and now I'm going after him. So again, let's look at it from this side. So anytime I have somebody on top, again, this is my arm isn't. First, I try to get my arm in a decent position, but assume that it's down here. So again, Enrique is sort of in that middle range. He's kind of covering my middle torso. So what I'm going to try to do is get him to my hips, where my legs can pop him up to create space, or you know, on his shoulder, on my shoulders, where I can create any kind of space. So right now, I did not escape. I know Enrique has to posture up. This allows me to come back. Once I get my grips, guys, attack immediately. Okay? Do not let him dominate. A lot of times when people get him from the bottom, they're just so happy to put the guy back in guard, and the guy passes the guard, and now you know, you can't do that too often because eventually you're going to get exhausted. So again, the initial thing is try to get your arms back in place if you can. If I cannot, I try to get him to my hips or my shoulders. Sometimes as I'm trying to get him to my hips, yeah. So I initially try to put him to my hips, but as he starts to move, but once I get here, I immediately, guys, this is where split guard truly shines. Is you know, I set up the split guard from the guard, from closed guard, from open guard, from half guard, and most importantly, from bottom side control. As soon as I put him back in guard, usually because usually people, when they start to lose top side control, they try to control those hips, and the arms come from here to here, and that's a perfect time to attack with split guard.
Awesome. Good morning, Adolfo.
What's up, Adolfo?
How do you deal with a really good float passer? I bring this one up as the next one on topic, but I believe recently we went over your float passing.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
would you deal if you were to be float passer? And
Float passer. Float like a butterfly. I'm gonna sting like a bee.
I have to do this thing.
So I generally don't want to be here. This is already. I generally don't want to be there. So you're basically letting the guy, once the guy floats on you. So let's go float again. One more time, please.
Tap.
So what I do,
Keep me grounded.
guys, you're like serving it up to me. If you don't have the split guard DVD, buy it.
Don't use any coupon code.
Guys, it does bum me out when I spent 30 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then this guy can buy my knowledge for freaking price of a sandwich.
Less.
Yeah, maybe your basic sandwich. But that aside, what did I just do? When I don't like, you know, to carry the guy kind of in a butterfly guard, because what happens, even if I play long enough, your legs get tired, so you're constantly lifting him. You're constantly off balance and lifting. As soon as I off balance him, I slide enough to put my foot on the hip. As soon as my foot is on the hip, I'm going to split guard. From split guard is extremely high level offensive guard, guys. If you don't want to spend whatever the Fanatics charges, go to split guard, Google it. My name will pop up. There's a ton of split guard videos that we put out on free on YouTube. And this is the way to go, because you could see as soon as I float him, this is doing what he wants to do. When the guy floats, if he's patient, I'm not patient. I usually try to move forward, but if a guy is patient and floats, your legs will start to get tired. The second they slow down is when the guard pass happens. As soon as somebody starts to float, I off balance him. So there's a sequence. As he floats, I try to off balance. As soon as I off balance him, at least one foot goes on the hip. As soon as one foot is on the hip, I go to split guard. So off balance, foot on the hip, split guard, attack. One more time. So as soon as he floats, I'm going to try to off balance. As soon as my foot is on the hip, which it already is, split guard, attack. This is probably the lowest level of, go ahead, Jerome. This is probably usually the worst case scenario. You wind up with split guard, where the guy recognizes danger and sweeps himself, and you wind up top side control. So that's how I deal with a float passer. Off balance. All you need is just a little bit off balance. So look what happens here. He's strong. He's floating. The minute he off balances, that foot goes on the hip. As soon as it's there, I attack at the same time. So again, off balance, foot on the hip, split guard, attack. And just like that, we're out of time. So guys, please. So guys, it's kind of weird. The subscribers has kind of been pretty steady around 16,000. So guys, help us grow the channel if you can.
Create more accounts. Follow the channel.
If you have any bots that can juice up, I don't know, guys. But anyways, we'll see you next Friday.